Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. Today, we will embark on an inspiring journey of the Parenting 411 podcast as we welcome Dr. Paul McNeil, a true advocate of homeschooling. He has carved an exceptional path from being homeschooled to achieving remarkable success in higher education and beyond. He experienced homeschooling from fifth grade through college, and Dr. McNeil's unique perspective and invaluable lessons from his homeschooling years have profoundly shaped his academic and professional endeavors. Join us as we explore how his homeschooling experience laid a foundation for academic excellence and prepared him for when he went to college and was able to handle the challenges of higher education. Unveil the transferable skills and mindsets he acquired during homeschooling, which have played a pivotal role in his thriving career. Now, Dr. McNeil is a recognized expert in customer retention, marketing, product innovation, and digital transformation. And this conversation will primarily focus on the transformative impact of homeschooling on his journey as an accomplished individual. So beyond his remarkable career achievements, Dr. McNeil also dedicates his free time to nurturing young minds, introducing middle school students to coding and conversational design through virtual camps and after-school partnerships. So get ready to be inspired by the wisdom and insights that he will share. Welcome, Dr. Paul McNeil.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
So why don't we just start off talking about your early childhood and your family's journey into homeschooling?
Sure. Let's see. Early childhood. We moved around a lot. So that would have school for me started, I think, in around kindergarten. I was about 4. I tested into a gifted and talented program in New York. We were living in Brooklyn at the time. And but my dad had to move for work. So I only did a couple of months there. When we left there, I pretty much did the traditional school route, private schools, until about 4th grade. When 4th grade happened, my understanding of the memories is that there was a kind of like a race issue. So there were, the school I went to was predominantly white, and they had a couple of Black teachers here and there, but they weren't hiring new Black teachers. What they would do is they would have educated, certified teachers working as TAs for people who might not have been had the specialty or training in a specific grade. So they would take the 5th grade teacher and put her over kindergarten instead of just giving the specialized Black teacher who specialized in K-2, giving her own class. She would be the assistant, stuff like that. And so there was some, I guess, back and forth with the parents. I was kind of young, but whatever the case is, my dad decided, I'm just going to homeschool you guys. We're not going to deal with this. This is ridiculous. My parents were both educators. So my dad was K-8 and my mom did high school and university. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we got started. It was supposed to be for 1 year, and it ended up being basically till I left home for college.
Wow, that's interesting. So it sounds like both of your parents were equally involved in your homeschooling. Is that the case?
No, not particularly. I would say it transitioned. So in the beginning, my dad was more in the primary, I guess, educator there for those elementary years till maybe around junior high. Okay. And then at that point, they transitioned and my mom would teach more. Also, my mom was better at math and science and stuff. And by the time you get to junior high, that was kind of where they would do the handoff. And then by high school, I pretty much did my own thing. I then dropped out in protest, but that's for a later question, probably.
Well, that's really interesting. It sounds like you were really blessed by having parents that were educators. And although, you don't have to have that,
right.
But that's really pretty special in that they could hand off and specialize in their particular areas, and then allow the other parent to teach in their lane of brilliance. So that sounds really neat. And so I was going to ask, so were you on board with the idea of homeschooling and, at the beginning? And then you can talk a bit about when you dropped out in
Dropped out of
protest.
homeschool. Yeah. This is what happens when you let kids read. Um, so initially, I thought it was okay because up to that point, I had known one or two kids who were homeschooled, and they told me how fun it was. They're like, "You don't do anything; you just do school for an hour, and then you just play video games all day." And I was like, "This sounds great." My parents initially had a much more structured approach to homeschooling,
Right.
and so that wasn't the case. But again, it was supposed to only be for a year, so I was like, "Okay, we're doing it for a year, whatever. I'll go back to school in another year." The second year, it was like, "Okay, it's been 2 years. Well, we're getting ready to move. This makes sense." By the third year, I was no longer on board. I'm about 12 or 13, and I feel like, hey,
Wow.
I'm not able to have the same kind of social interactions that my peers were having. And I will preference that with saying that we also moved from a community that was very homeschool friendly college town to a small town in like rural Louisiana, where I was probably the only homeschool person in my
Right.
part of the city. And so the allowances and things like that, my parents didn't know about homeschooling, so they didn't know things like being able to go to the schools and have me just go for one or two sections or just to do sports or things like that. So we were really becoming homeschooled in very much isolation at that time. And so around that time, when you're really trying to fit in a lot, and now you just are always the oddball out, or you're not really around, it became less fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tried to bargain with them about me going to either a boarding academy or something like that. And so that began my quest to like get back to school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you did come back to school, homeschool, did you? Or what did you do?
So what ended up happening was I took off. Well, first I did a year of silent protest for school after 8th grade because I wanted to go to high school, and it didn't work out, or it didn't happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had been reading a lot about, I think around 13, I had really gotten into like the 60s flower power stuff, like on my own. I had learned about like the Black Panther movement and everything like that. And I was like, I'm a protest. So every day I would get up and pretend to do work, and I would just do all of these things. I would volunteer to do other stuff that would keep me from actually doing academics, silently protesting. So I did that for a year, and then realized this was dumb. Need to be in high school. Okay, so 9th grade, I start doing some stuff. But at this point, I'm more in control of my education. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but I've done all of the types of homeschooling you can do. So there was a point where my parents were very regimented. Then there
Mm-hmm.
was the point where I kind of took over and did my own thing,
Okay.
kind of self-directed, whatever I feel like studying, this is what we're doing. And then I also did at that time correspondence. So a little bit of my age, this is like the early 2000s. So online classes were still very expensive. Like everywhere still didn't really have broadband, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. So there was a point when I did correspondence. So I would mail in my stuff. So I did that for maybe like 9th grade, part of 10th grade-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, you've had a very interesting journey. My goodness. How did being homeschooled contribute to your success in college and beyond? We'll be right back after this. If you're looking to reach a massive audience of parents and caregivers, then look no further than ProPix by the Parenting 411, the ultimate marketing program designed to skyrocket your brand to new heights. With ProPix, we've created 3 incredible packages to suit your marketing needs and budget. So let's take a look. First up is our social starter package. You'll receive a stunning graphic promo piece, plus we'll also feature your brand on the Parenting 411 Instagram page. It's the perfect way to make a memorable first impression and get parents buzzing about your business. Now, if you're ready to level up, Our Parenting Pro package is where it's at. You'll enjoy all the benefits of the Social Starter package, plus more awesome benefits, including exposure on the Parenting 411 podcast, which reaches parents in more than 22 countries each week. But wait, there's more. For those seeking the pinnacle of marketing power, our Elite Exposure package is the way to go. You'll get even more exposure across our platform, including thousands of followers and connections on LinkedIn. Get ready to dominate the airwaves and establish yourself as the go-to resource for families everywhere. Take advantage of Pro Picks by the Parenting 411 today and unlock unparalleled marketing opportunities for your business. But I should tell you that prices are set to increase on November 1st, so act now. Pro Picks by the Parenting 411 is your passport to the hearts and minds of parents. Visit ProPicksbyP411.com. Join us today and watch the magic happen. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
I think in college it helped me because I was used to kind of learning on my own and studying things. I wasn't limited at home to traditional grades. So there were a lot of classes like my freshman year of college that I really didn't have to study for or pay it that much attention to because I was already advanced in those sections. So it was really kind of comforting because it allowed me to focus most of my stress and energy and culture shock on being around people again. I mentioned that we lived in very small communities that didn't have a lot going on if you weren't in school. So like at one point we lived in Texas where the town was so small that all of the high school kids went to one high school and it was still 300 people, not the senior class, the whole high school was 300 people.
Wow.
And so and it was at a time when Texas was not friendly towards homeschoolers like they are now. So it was kind of like you kind of had to keep everything. It was like kind of had to stay to your side, and people were reporting for negligence and all kinds of stuff. And when you try to work with the school, they weren't working with you, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so as a result of that, for me, my biggest adjustment freshman year of college was understanding how to be around my peers and how to socialize. But I think that because I had been so advanced on the academic side, I could spend most of my focus on that. And that was helpful. And then also I was a very introspective person. So it allowed me to like really pay attention and be able to kind of accelerate that social aspect, because I would do little things. Like I was really shy when I started. So I'm like, okay, today I have to talk to one person. Tomorrow I have to talk to 3 new people. And I would just kind of do these little internal experiments until I got to a point where, we could have conversations and that was fun.
Wow. So what would you say, though, were the key advantages? I mean, you do talk about how you had to kind of scale up in the social space, but what do you think were some key advantages for you of being homeschooled that prepared you for higher education?
Sure. So I would say the ability to do my own research. I was very good at finding things out, not just for assignments, but navigating life in general. As I mentioned, I did some self-directed type learning for junior high, as well as the correspondence. I found the correspondence course. Like I was the one who did the research and found out how much it costs, all of those things. So I had these life skills that when I got to higher ed were very important in terms of navigating not only assignments, but also the structure of like financial aid. I knew how to do a lot of basic home things as well, which I later in college learned everyone didn't know. Laundry, things like that. I knew how to do all of those things. I could take stains out of shirts. I could sew on a button. So I would say that life skills and maybe a little bit of practical common sense came for me from homeschooling, as well as being able to focus.
That's pretty cool. And those life skills are so important. I discovered the same thing. I know when I was touring colleges with my twin sons, and they've now graduated from college, but I remember back when we were touring and a couple of schools talked about laundry service and all of that. And so parents were asking for, details about the pricing and whatever. And I looked at them, both of them, and you're not getting that right.
I know that's right.
And it was okay because they had been doing their laundry anyway.
Right.
at home, but I just was like astonished. Now, some children were in kind of really rigorous. One of the colleges had a very rigorous and highly regarded music program, and they spend all their time on that. So maybe that would be useful for them. I don't know, but that was just not something that we were going to take advantage of. That was something that our children already
Yeah.
knew, and this is really just they were going to learn how to take care of things on their own. So I can definitely agree with you that a lot of people did not come to school. I mean, and even in my own personal experience, I saw where people weren't familiar with how to manage their finances and dealing with the bank on campus and all of that stuff. So I'm really grateful for the training that I got at home before I went to college, because
Absolutely.
it's really shocking. But now, so did you face any difficulties or differences adapting to a traditional classroom setting in
Absolutely. A
college?
hundred percent. A
Okay, what
hundred
was that
percent.
like? What was that like?
So because I by so basically I'd been running my own education from about the age of 12.
Mm,
And also, since both of my parents were educators, they did other jobs as well, but they would get this paper, this newsletter called Education Weekly, which educators get. So we'll talk about some of the latest things going on in education, all of these types of things. Because I'm reading, I'd go, oh, I'm going to try that. And so whenever I would find out about something new that was a more effective way of learning, I would just try it on myself, see if it worked for me. As well as I didn't force myself to take unit tests or things like that until I really knew the material,
okay.
because I controlled my schedule. So when I
Mm-hmm.
got to school, I'll never forget the first month we had a pop quiz in a class. I had been doing my homework just fine. I understood, go to class, you learn,
Mm-hmm.
you do your homework. The pop quiz I wasn't ready for because I hadn't memorized any of these formulas. I just knew how to do it and I could use
Right.
my little sheet. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we're doing this pop quiz." Like, why? That's not effective. That makes no sense. I haven't learned the material. So I
Right.
got my first D.
Mm.
Um, and so things like, so for me, it became, oh, we have to do the balance, and being on someone else's timetable, whether it worked for my learning style or not, was probably my biggest academic challenge.
Okay.
But once I figured out how that worked, and
Mm-hmm.
the game of school, traditional school worked, then it was okay. But that was my biggest
Mm.
challenge.
Mm. Now, you mentioned your research skills
Mhm.
earlier. Were there any other mindsets or advantages you think you developed during homeschooling that helped you to excel in college once you got the classroom thing figured out?
Yes, I would say I had a level of confidence that I could learn anything that I
Mm.
think that some students in traditional who had gone to a traditional high school, they didn't have. Like I had this very, when you're younger, you have a blind confidence in yourself anyway, right? You can't die and you know everything. And my third was I can learn anything. So even if I don't know it, I know I can learn it. And
Mm-hmm.
so not having that limiting belief, like, oh, I'm not good at this or I don't do this well. I didn't have that particular um, off switch. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was able to approach all of my classes, whether they were hard or not, as, hey, I can figure this out. How do we do this? And then I had study skills that I had learned. I had all of these various things. So I kind of knew my learning style going in because I
Mm-hmm.
had taken the time to do it before. I knew what worked for me. And then when things didn't work, I kind of knew how to iterate on it. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that was a skill. And then this second one, it might fit in as an asset and a liability, but I also wasn't sure where I fit in the hierarchy of school because until that point, I was my only classmate. I have a younger brother, but he's
Mm-hmm.
4 grades below me. So I hadn't been competitive with other students for real since I was like 10. So when I came in there, on the plus side, I'm very competitive. So I want to be the best in the class. So I have this chip on my shoulder to prove that I'm just as smart as those who went. And then on the other side, I wasn't sure. So that was kind of fuel, I guess.
Hmm. That's interesting. And so now shifting beyond college, in what ways do you believe that your homeschooling experience might have influenced your success in the business world?
My ability to pull together solutions from different um, resources or different industries and arenas, I think that is directly related to homeschool. So a lot of times when you're homeschooling, you're pulling together curriculum, perhaps from different uh, book providers or curriculum providers. You might not do all of one. We did a lot of research, pull math from this, this from Ingram, this from this other smaller brand. And so things like that, being able to create a cohesive solution from a lot of desperate. Is that the way you said that? Is that the word I'm looking
This,
for?
yes,
Disparate,
this spread.
disparate,
Mm-hmm.
disparate resources. Or I think that that has helped me in business a lot because I can look at different problems and have a knowledge of different industries because of my interests and have these interdisciplinary approaches that create these really interesting, often cost-effective solutions for things that my peers don't always catch or see right away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how do you think your ability to think independently and self-direct your learning might have impacted your approach to being creative and, with strategy in the business realm?
How is it? I mean, it's made my career. I mean, there's no way that I have my career or even have my doctorate without being able to do that. My doctorate was interdisciplinary. So I had to be self-directed because I was doing, to get a doctorate, you have to create a system, or at least in engineering, you have to create a system or solve a problem that when you're done, only you are the foremost expert on that particular thing, your solution or whatever it is that you did. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have to be self-directed because after a certain point, nobody, not even your advisor, knows your subject matter as well as you do. You have
Mm-hmm.
to be able to pull from the resources and research and papers and technologies and be able to put those things together to build something that's cohesive. And that led through, again, from homeschool on to graduate school on to my business now.
Mm-hmm. And so, for those parents that are considering homeschooling or they may be in it now, but just like not sure about where this is going to go, can you talk about how it cultivated skills like self-motivation, time management, and adaptability that are, highly valued in today's environment, both in education and in the professional world?
Absolutely. I think that if you're concerned, if you're doing the right thing or you're not doing it, I think it's just a matter of communicating and really paying attention to your child and also bring them into the planning phases with you as well. I think that that sense of ownership
Mm-hmm.
allows them to want to take ownership in their careers and education moving forward for the rest of their careers, whether it is just college, graduate school, or their career starting a business. It's that sense of ownership and having the practice early on of setting up foundations of things, following through with plans because you're invested in them, and being able to understand sometimes there are hurdles and blocks, but still pushing through it because they are on board and knowing also advocating for themselves and knowing that their voice is heard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that maybe not in the earlier years, but once you start getting to like junior high, high school, that advocacy and that almost teammate mentality ish with your student will really help them go as far as being self motivated, wanting to adhere to time schedules and all of those other things that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And so I would think, because you were so independent and self-directed yourself in your education, really all the way up through college and graduate school, how do you strike a balance between operating independently and seeking support or guidance from others when you're faced with challenges or opportunities?
Probably not as well as I should, to be honest. I am very, very, very independent. And so one of the things that I have been working on and I'm constantly working on is, hey, you can do this on your own, but the amount
Hmm.
of time that it will take for you to do it on your own, is it worth it? Like ask for
Right.
help.
Uh-huh.
And so that took some undoing or some unlearning, I would say more so in my 20s. Um, I feel like I do much better now, but I'm me, so I would have to have an outside resource for that. But I would definitely say that um, it is something that you have to adjust to. If you are very, very independent, it can be difficult to think like, let me ask for help. And so that's where, like you said, um, having learned how to have that introspection and really value and weigh things, pros, cons, whatever your process is that you love,
Mm-hmm.
to say, yes, I can do this on my own, but the timing is the more important factor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And time is absolutely valuable for sure. No, so what advice will you give to homeschool students who do aspire to succeed academically and professionally?
Uh, which which years are where?
Oh, well, how about the K through 6 and then middle school and high school? If those
Okay.
if your advice would be different, I don't know.
No, no problem. So for K to 6, my advice would be to learn as much as you can, ask as many questions as you can, and make sure that you tell your parents all of the things that are interesting to you as possible. If your parents are homeschooling you, they more than likely are very invested in making sure that you're exposed to a lot of things. And so
Mhm.
if you hear something or you see something that you're interested in, just ask them to see if there's a way that they can incorporate it in your learning so that you can really dive deep into those things,
Mhm.
or at least see if you really like it. I think that that's the advantage of being at home. You can take a math class out of learning how to buy, I don't know, clothes at, a
Mhm.
boutique or something like that. And so that's what I would advise them. Middle school and for those in middle school, like 6 to 8, I think that is
Mhm.
6, 8, 6 to
Mhm.
9. My advice there would be all the things that you've been interested in. If you can find one or two that really you don't mind doing, even if your parents aren't making you do it,
Mhm.
try to dive into those couple of things even more, because the earlier you can start really getting focused in on something, the better. And then if you're in high school, um, try to practically pick something that you're interested in and see how much you really like doing it. And also use YouTube and Google to find out what are some things you could do if you're someone who likes money, if that's your motivator, how can you make money off the things you're interested in? And a lot of times having these different experiences in high school, internships, having started a little business, things like that, they really help you get into college. And once you're in college, they can help you get these other opportunities, because then you can say, well, I already did X, Y, and Z for the last 2 years, or for the last 2 summers, I've already shadowed and worked with a veterinarian because I want to be a vet. So once you get to undergrad, you might be able to get a fast track to tech, or to a vet tech, or some other opportunities may pop up where you'll stand out against your peers because you have something in your past that people aren't expecting someone in your age group to have.
Hmm.
We'll be right back after this. Are you a parent looking to unlock your potential in raising confident, capable, and courageous children? Well, look no further. Join us at the upcoming Parent and Purpose Summit Back to School Edition, where parenting experts from around the world will come together to share their wisdom and insights. I'm Carol Maletta, founder of the Parenting 411. This summit is your opportunity to gain essential skills and tools to become the parent you've always aspired to be. Over 5 incredible days, we'll dive deep into topics like positive discipline, effective communication, mental health, self-care, school readiness, and more. An attendee from our last summit told us, "This summit changed my parenting game. I feel more confident and connected with my children than ever before." So secure your seat at the Parent and Purpose Summit today. Visit parentandpurposesummit2023.com. That's Parent and Purpose Summit 2023.com. And click the registration button to join us on this transformative journey. The Parent and Purpose Summit, where intentional parenting begins. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
And so, what do you think parents need to know when embarking on this path? And are there any kind of general tools or resources that you'd recommend that they seek out?
I think one of the main things that was really helpful was an understanding of learning styles. for your child. And so I don't have a specific resource. I can't think of the link right now, but I know that if you Google Learn Styles quiz or something like that, there are a couple of free ones where you could just
Mm-hmm.
have your child take those, or you can answer them for your child if they're too young. And just
Mm-hmm.
noticing and understanding what is their primary and secondary and tertiary learning styles, because then you can kind of teach them to learn in that way, but make sure that they understand how to learn in the other ways as well. But then you kind of know how to shape experiences. So I think learning styles is huge. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that we all know YouTube University. I'll be honest with you. I have I have 3 degrees after high school, and I can honestly say YouTube, knowing how to use YouTube and Google effectively, really got the degrees, right? The schools will sign the paperwork, but a lot of times you're going outside of just a textbook. So making sure that your child understands how to find resources and how to vet them for
That's important.
accuracy and authority. That's something else. And then also just making sure that they have those social outlets so that they can still engage. Um, that's something that I think many parents forget because oftentimes the parents homeschooling haven't been homeschooled. And so you're like, yes, I can do all of these things myself. But remember that there's a large social aspect to public school that you were doing that you didn't cognizantly think, like you were doing it subconsciously, you weren't thinking about it, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's the lunchroom or the hallway or the bus ride. And so when you're homeschooling your child, you have to remember that you now have to build in those moments so that they can have that well-rounded growth, because nobody wants their child to be the homeschool adult who can't have conversations and navigate life.
Right. And that's one area that I think that homeschooling has really evolved very well
Mm-hmm.
on. I mean, compared to the time when my children were younger and they're in their early 20s, there's definitely a lot more effort and a lot more collaboration and formation of homeschooling groups and
Yeah,
all of that, so that
love it.
that students can get that interaction. So that's been nice to very nice to see, because I think that's the first reservation that a lot of parents will have is, what about socialization? Or I should say it's the second, because the first is, how am I going to teach all this stuff? I wasn't good at science or
Yeah,
math or whatever. I'm not a great writer or something like that. So, and then very close behind it is, being able to provide that socialization experience that they need.
yeah.
So,
And I'll mention really quickly too. You have homeschool groups. You have things like the Homeschool Coalition, and things that will help you. They're like co-ops, so you can lower the cost of your materials, but
mhm.
also um, you're still paying taxes for the school. So many districts will allow you to go to them and say like, hey, we're homeschooling, but we would like my child to come in for maybe just the science class, or just come in for sports, or just come in for these various things. So you don't always have to come completely out of pocket as well, as far as the socialization piece is concerned. It just will take a little bit of you understanding what is allowed for you inside of your district.
That's good information to have right there, because I usually hear about parents being able to get their children into sports, but the idea that they can kind of come in for individual classes and still go out and homeschool, that's pretty good. That's really great. So, as you reflect on your homeschooling experience, how has it shaped your outlook on lifelong learning and personal growth?
I think that it's caused me to view both of those things as necessary. Um, I can't think of life without trying to learn new things. I'm always looking to learn. I always feel like there's room for improvement, and I always feel like each conversation, every person you meet, you can learn something, you can glean something from it. And so I think it's caused me to look at life almost like a an everyday treasure hunt, because I'm
Hmm.
always looking for the gem and trying to think, what did I learn today? Or what am
Hmm.
I going to learn today? And
Hmm.
so I think that that came from homeschooling, because I'm so used to finding lessons in everything, right? Math when we go to the store, chemistry when we're cooking, things like that, because I've my brain is just wired way now from years of that. I
Mhm.
don't know any other way. So everything to me can lead to something else, can provide a solution to a problem that might not necessarily be in the same category.
What you plan on doing, like with your company, and how you plan to contribute in marketing and innovation and helping others?
Sure. So one of the things that I would really like to do with my business is uh, create a just a platform and an understanding that um, marginalized groups can be at the forefront of the new technology when it comes to promoting their business or when it comes to entertainment or social media or anything like that. I feel like many times what happens is we are not thought about in the inception of many of the new technologies. And you look at things like Twitter, um, Facebook, these things are generally not targeted at marginalized communities. But then when we get on them, we end up changing the scape of them, actually really being the driving factor to a lot of the profits.
Hmm.
And so just looking at contributing in that way when it comes to the technology space and in the marketing space,
Hmm.
as well as educating small and medium-sized marginalized business owners about some of these technologies that are accessible to them, but they don't often know or aren't exposed to.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a very important point. I appreciate you raising that. Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience? Any final thoughts or key takeaways?
Key takeaways, final thoughts. I would share that I do work with individual students or homeschool groups as far as helping them to get involved in technology. So that is something that if they are interested, I can give you the information to share with them. I don't have a ton of time like I used to anymore, so I am very selective. I only work with a few every semester, but it is something that I do virtually, and we do have some courses and things. But right now, we're, as far as one-on-one help or small group help, I have been doing that where we focus on understanding these emerging technologies, getting them started on computer science pathways, and potentially getting them on a pathway to earn, whether it's starting their own business and understanding how that tech startup space works, or getting a certification or computer science AP, that kind of thing.
Okay, and so why don't you tell us then how we can follow you, whether it's on social media, your website, or however, whatever channels you have.
Sure. So from the professional business side, it's usable sec guy um, on Instagram and on Twitter. And then for the education, it's onecoolblurred.com and also onecoolblurred on Twitter.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us because, as you may know, I've been doing this whole series on homeschooling this month and education for parents to really learn. For those who are considering homeschooling, we cover different aspects, whether it's selecting a curriculum, integrating homeschooling into family life, and so I also thought it would be very interesting to have a homeschooled student to come on and talk about the experience while you were in the midst of it, and then how you moved from there to college and higher education, and then your career and how that has shaped you. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with us.
Thank you so much for having me.